Welcome to Reading Africa. Today we're going to read about the Kingdom of Benin. The Kingdom of Benin was a kingdom in West Africa in what is now southern Nigeria. The Kingdom of Benin's capital was Edo, now known as Benin City in Edo State. The Benin Kingdom was one of the oldest and most highly developed states in the coastal hinterland of West Africa. It was formed around the 11th century AD and lasted until it was annexed by the British Empire in 1897. The original people and founders of the Benin Kingdom, the Edo people, were initially ruled by the Ogiso, who called their land Igodomigodo. The first Ogiso wielded much influence and gained popularity as a good ruler, and there were many other Ogisos to follow after him. However, the Edo people became dissatisfied with the rule of the dynasty of the Ogisos, and in the 13th century they invited Prince Oranemiyan of Ife to rule them. His son Eweka is regarded as the first Oba or king of Benin, though authority would remain for many years with the hereditary ruler order of local chiefs. Late in the 13th century, royal power began to assert itself under the Oba Owedo and was firmly established under the most famous Oba, Uware the Great, who was described as a famous great warrior and magician. He established hereditary succession to the throne and vastly expanded the territory of the Benin Kingdom, which by the mid-16th century extended from the Niger River Delta in the east to what is now Lagos in the west. Oba Uwahare is credited with turning Benin City into a city-state from a military fortress built by the Ogisos, protected by moats and walls. It was from his bastion that he launched his military campaigns and began the expansion of the kingdom from the Edo-speaking heartlands. A series of walls marked the incremental growth of the sacred city from 815 AD until its decline in the 16th century. The architecture of the walls of Benin are a series of earthworks made up of banks and ditches called iya in the Edo language in the area around present-day Benin City, the capital of Edo, Nigeria. They consist of 15 kilometers of city iya and an estimated 16,000 kilometers in the rural area around Benin. Some estimates suggest that the walls of Benin may have been constructed between the 13th and mid-15th century Common Era, and others suggest that the walls of Benin may have been constructed during the first millennial AD. The Benin Wall was known to the Europeans, as noted by ethno-mathematician Ron Anglash, who describes Europeans first came to Africa. They considered the architecture very disorganized and thus primitive. However, it had never occurred to the Europeans that the Africans might have been using a form of mathematics that they had discovered yet. It never occurred to the Europeans that the Africans might have been using a form of mathematics that they had not discovered yet. The Wall of Benin is known to be the second longest wall in the world after the Great Wall of China. Excavations at Benin City have revealed that it was already flourishing around 200 to 1300 Common Era. In 1440, Oba Ohuare, also known as Uware the Great, who came into power, expanded the borders of the former city-state. It was only at this time that the administrative center of the kingdom began to be referred to as Ibinu, after the Portuguese word, and corrupted to Bini by the Shekiri Urhobo, and the Edo, who all lived together in the royal administrative centre of the kingdom. The Portuguese, who arrived in an expedition led by João Afonso de Oliveira, would refer to it as Benin, and the centre would become known as the Benin City. The Kingdom of Benin eventually gained political strength and ascendancy over much of what is now Mid-West Africa in Nigeria. By the 17th century, the kingdom fell into decline, following the constant civil wars and disputes over kingship. However, at its height, Benin dominated trade along the entire coastline from the West Niger Delta through Lagos to the Kingdom of Great Accra in Ghana. It was for this reason that this coastline was named the Bight of Benin. The present-day Republic of Benin, formerly Dahomey, decided to choose the name of this bight as the name of its country. Benin ruled over the tribes of the Niger Delta, including the Western Igbo, the Ijaw, the Ishikiri, the Ika, the Isoko, and the Urhobo, amongst others. It also held sway over the Eastern Yoruba tribes of Ondo, Ekiti, Ubo, and Ijebu. It also conquered what eventually became the city of Lagos hundreds of years before the British took over in 1851. The state developed an advanced artistic culture, especially in its famous artifacts of bronze, iron, ivory. This included bronze wall plaques, life-size bronze heads depicting the Obas and Yobas of Benin. Before trade and contact with Europeans, supplies of metals were very scarce in Benin. After the Kingdom of Benin began trading with the Europeans at the end of the 15th century Common Era, the quality of bronze castings and thickness of castings had greatly increased. Before trade with Europeans, the blades were incredibly thin, and only wealthy elites could afford work with these metals that were regarded as precious. The first European travelers to reach Benin were Portuguese explorers under João Afonso de Oliveira in about 1485. A strong mercantile relationship developed with the Edo trading slaves and tropical products such as ivory, pepper, and palm oil for European goods such as manila and guns. In the early century of the 16th century, the Oba sent an ambassador to Lisbon, and the King of Portugal sent Christian missionaries to Benin City. The first English expedition to Benin was in 1553, and significant trading developed between England and Benin, based on the export of ivory, palm oil, pepper, and later slaves. Visitors in the 16th and 19th centuries brought back to Europe tales of Great Benin, a fabulous city of noble buildings, ruled over by a powerful king. Given the characterization of the Benin culture, it might be misunderstood that the Oba did not accept colonial aspirations. As soon as the Oba began to suspect Britain for larger colonial designs, it ceased communications with the British. Expedition in 1896 to 97, when the troops of British country captured, burned, and looted Benin City as part of a punitive mission, which brought the kingdom's imperial era to an end. As Benin began to decline after 1700, to preserve the kingdom's independence, bit by bit, the Oba banned the export of goods from Benin until the trade was exclusively in palm oil. By the late half of the 19th century, Great Britain had come to want a closer relationships with the Kingdom of Benin, for British officials were increasingly interested in controlling trade in the area and accessing the kingdom's rubber resources to support their own growing tire car market. Several attempts were made to achieve this end, beginning with the official visit of Richard Francis Burton in 1862, when he was consul at Fernando Po. Following that came attempts to establish a treaty between Benin and the United Kingdom by Hewitt, Blair, and Ainsley. The kingdom resisted, becoming a British protectorate throughout the 1880s, but the British remained persistent. Progress was finally made in 1892 during the visit of the Vice-Consul Henry Galloway. Before the Galway Treaty, the Kingdom of Benin had managed to retain its independence, and the Oba exercised a monopoly over trade which the British found irksome. The territory was coveted by an influential group of investors for its rich natural resources such as palm oil, rubber, and ivory. After British consul Richard Burton visited Benin in 1862, he wrote of Benin as a place of gratuitous barbarity which stinks of death, a narrative which was negative and wrong and widely publicized in Britain and increased pressure for the territory's subjugation. In spite of this pressure, the Kingdom of Benin maintained independence and was not visited by another representative of Britain until 1892. Henry Galway visited Benin City, hoping to open up trade and ultimately annex Benin Kingdom and make it a British protectorate. Galway was able to get Omo Obo and his chiefs to sign a treaty which gave Britain legal justification for exerting greater influence over the empire. While the treaty itself contains text suggesting Orwellian actively sought Britain protection, this appears to be a fiction. Galway's own account suggests that the Oba was hesitant to sign the treaty, although some suggest that humanitarian motivations were driving Britain's actions. Letters written between administrators suggest today that economic motivations were gravely predominant. Much of the ideas that were sold in Great Britain at the time about the kingdom's bloody customs and sacrificial customs were not found within the legal document of the Galway Treaty. When the people in Benin discovered Britain's true intentions when invasion to depose the King of Benin without approval from the king, his generals ordered a preemptive attack on the British party approaching Benin City, including 8 unknowing British representatives who were killed. A punitive expedition was launched in 1897. The British force under the command of Admiral Sir Harry Rawson razed and burned the city, destroying much of the country's treasured art and dispersing all of the remained parts, and also destroying the Great Wall. The stolen portrait figures, busts, and groups created in iron, carved ivory, and especially brass were stolen, and some are now displayed in museums around the world. This is the end of the reading of the Kingdom of Benin. Thank you for listening.